Blood dripped from Gideon Holt's knuckles onto the saloon floor as angry shouts filled the smoky air. The big man he'd just punched was getting back up, and 3 more cowboys were reaching for their guns. Gideon had always been strong, but his size had never made him fast. Today felt different, though. Today felt like the end of everything he'd worked for in the Nebraska Territory during the hot summer of 1867. The other ranch hands at Murphy's saloon were backing away from him like he was a contagion. "You clumsy ox," shouted Hank, wiping blood from his broken nose. "Finn died because of you. Too slow and heavy to be of any use." The words hit harder than any punch. 3 months ago, Gideon had been a dependable cowboy in Dust Devil Gulch. He could haul more than any 2 men and had a gentle hand with spooked cattle. But everything changed during the stampede in May. Gideon's hands shook as he remembered that terrible day. He and Finn had been turning a small herd when a lightning strike sent the cattle into a frenzy. Finn's horse stumbled, throwing him to the ground. Gideon had spurred his own mount, but his weight slowed the horse, the saddle creaking under the strain. He was too slow. By the time he reached his friend, Finn was gone, trampled under the hooves of 100 panicked steers. Now the whole territory knew Gideon Holt wasn't just big, he was a liability. "Get out of here, Holt," said Murphy, the saloon owner. His voice wasn't mean, just tired. "These boys got a right to be angry. You've caused enough trouble." Gideon picked up his dusty hat from the floor. Nobody met his eyes as he walked toward the door. These men had been his friends once. They'd shared campfires and stories. But friendship couldn't survive the weight of his failure. Outside, the Nebraska sun beat down on Main Street. Dust Devil Gulch was just one dusty road with a few wooden buildings, the general store, the blacksmith, the church, and Murphy's saloon. Gideon's cabin sat 5 miles east of town, a small piece of land he'd bought with his savings. It was his dream once, a place to build a life. Now it felt like a prison. His horse, a sturdy mare named Dusty, waited patiently. She was one of the few living things that didn't seem to judge him for his size. "Come on, girl," he whispered. "Let's go home." The ride took an hour through rolling hills of tall grass. This land could be beautiful, but today it just looked empty. At his cabin, Gideon sat on the wobbly porch steps and stared out at the endless prairie. This was his life now. Alone with his shame. The sun was setting when he saw 3 riders. He recognized them instantly. Nash Corrigan rode in front, flanked by Jake Patterson and Tom Wheeler. Nash had once been a friend, but he had a cruel streak and enjoyed other people's misfortunes. "Evening, Gideon," Nash called out, his voice overly friendly. "Mind if we water our horses?" Gideon nodded toward the trough. These men hadn't come for water. Nash dismounted while his men stayed in their saddles. "Been hearing interesting news in town," Nash said, fanning himself with his hat. "About your situation out here." "What situation?" "Living all alone like this." A big fella with no prospects, Nash's smile was all teeth. "The boys at Murphy's been talking. They think you need help." Gideon felt a chill despite the heat. "Don't need help from anybody." "Now that's where you're wrong, friend," Nash said. "We heard about a family in trouble. A Chinese family, railroad workers. Got a daughter needs looking after real bad." Jake leaned forward. "Girl named Mylin. Heard she was a real beauty, before her accident." "What kind of accident?" Gideon asked, a sense of dread growing. "Carriage turned over 2 years back," Tom said. "Broke her back. Can't walk. Her family's been trying to care for her, but they're poor as dirt. They're looking for anyone to take her off their hands." Nash nodded, his eyes bright with mean humor. "Their community leader, a fella named Mr. Chen, is offering a stipend. $50 and a jade pendant that belonged to her mother. A token for whoever's willing to take on the burden." The cruel joke was clear. The useless, fat cowboy and the crippled Chinese girl. 2 souls nobody else wanted, a perfect match in their minds. Why are you telling me this? Gideon asked. Because we're your friends, Nash said. And friends help each other out. The Chen family need someone to take their girl. You need just about everything. Seems like a perfect fit, Jake laughed. Besides, what decent woman would have a man who's too slow to save his own partner? The word stung because they held a kernel of truth. Gideon's reputation was ruined. He was damaged goods, just like this girl. What's in it for you? He asked. Nash's fake smile slipped. Let's just say Mr. Chen is grateful to anyone who helped solve his problem. Grateful enough to pay a finder's fee they were getting paid to dump an unwanted woman on an unwanted man. 2 problems solved with one cruel gesture. I need time to think, Gideon said. Of course, Nash said, remounting his horse. But don't think too long. They're getting desperate. As the men rode away, Gideon wondered if this was rock bottom, or if he could fall even further. The wagon arrived at dawn, driven by a tired-looking Chinese man with grey whiskers. Gideon had spent the night pacing, torn. Part of him wanted to refuse, but another, lonelier part whispered that this might be his only chance to have another person in his life. You halt? The man asked. He introduced himself as Mr. Chen. He didn't offer to shake hands. I have my Lin here, along with her things. He pulled back the canvas cover. The woman lying on a thin mattress was not what Gideon expected. She had hair like polished jet and skin like porcelain. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, held a deep sadness but also a spark of defiance. She was afraid but was trying hard not to show it. You must be Gideon, she said, her voice soft but steady, her English accented but clear. I am, Gideon said, touching the brim of his hat. I'm Mai Lin. She studied his face. They told you about my condition? Yes, And you are still willing to go through with this? Gideon looked at Mr. Chen, who was already unloading boxes. I reckon so, Gideon said. For the first time, Mai Lin smiled. It was a tired, weary smile. Well then, she said. I suppose we should get started. Getting her from the wagon to the cabin was difficult. She was heavier than she looked, and Mr. Chen was not a strong man. By the time they got her settled on the bed, all 3 were breathing hard. Among her belongings was a cleverly built chair with wheels, which she explained she'd paid for herself with savings from before her accident. Mr. Chen brought in 2 trunks, a sewing basket, and a small, lacquered box she held in her lap. The arrangement is for 1 year, he told Gideon, handing him a small pouch of coins and a beautiful jade pendant on a silk cord. If it does not work, you can send her back. But the money is yours. After he left, an awkward silence filled the small cabin. I should probably explain the rules, Gideon said finally. Rules? Mai Lin raised an eyebrow. About how this will work. You can have the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. He felt his face flush. And I won't. I don't expect you don't have to pretend this is a real marriage. I know why you agreed to this, she said quietly. You need the money, and I need a place to live where I am not a burden. That is all. Her words should have made him feel better, but they just made him feel small. It ain't just about the money, he said. No? She looked at him with those sharp, dark eyes. Then what is it about? Gideon couldn't find an answer that didn't sound pathetic. He couldn't admit he was so lonely he'd agree to this cruel arrangement just to have someone to talk to. I guess we'll figure it out as we go, he said. Mai Lin nodded. I suppose we will. She wheeled her chair to the window. It is very quiet here. Too quiet for most folks. I like quiet. She was silent for a moment. They told me about the stampede. About your friend. Gideon felt like he'd been punched. Mr. Chen thought I should know what kind of man I was marrying. He said you were too slow to save him. That's true, the words came out like broken glass. I was a failure. Were you? She asked. Or were you just a man who couldn't stop a tragedy? No one had ever framed it that way. Everyone in Dust Devil Gulch had decided what he was based on one terrible moment. But this woman, this stranger, was asking if that moment defined him. I don't know, he said honestly. Then I guess we will figure that out, too, Mai Lin said, and her smile this time looked almost real. As the sun climbed higher, Gideon began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this strange arrangement might be something more. But he didn't dare hope. Hope was a dangerous thing for people like them. The iron pot crashed to the floor, spilling stew everywhere as Mai Lin's wheelchair bumped the stove for the third time. This is not working, she said, her voice sharp with frustration. 2 weeks had passed, and the tiny cabin, once lonely for one, was impossibly cramped for two. Let me help, Gideon said, starting to rise. No, Mai Lin's dark eyes flashed. I can do this. I have to, but as she tried to maneuver around the spill, Gideon saw the problem. The cabin was built for a man living alone. The doorways were too narrow, the counters too high. The cabin's the problem, not you, he said gently. We need to make some changes. Changes cost money we do not have. We have the $50, he said. And I've got lumber stored in the barn. Mai Lin watched him. You would do that? Change your house for me. Gideon thought about it. This cabin had been his retreat from the world's judgment. Now, making it work for both of them felt necessary. It's our house now, he said. Might as well make it comfortable. Over the next few days, Gideon worked tirelessly. He widened doorways, lowered a section of the kitchen counter, and built shelves she could reach. The biggest job was a ramp from the porch to the ground, giving her the freedom to move outside on her own. The physical labor felt good. For the first time since the stampede, he was building something instead of just enduring. One afternoon, as he finished the ramp, he heard hoofbeats. 3 riders were coming, strangers with hard faces and guns hanging loose. Mai Lin, he called quietly. Get inside. The leader, a big man with a black beard, looked around the property like he was taking inventory. Afternoon, he said. Nice little spread. We're looking for work. The way he said it made Gideon's skin crawl. Don't have any work, Gideon said. That's a shame. The man's eyes moved to the cabin. Heard tell you got yourself a wife. A foreign thing. Must get lonely for a woman like that out here. Ice formed in Gideon's stomach. This wasn't a request, it was a threat. My wife and I like our privacy, Gideon said carefully. Of course, the man's smile showed yellow teeth. Thing is, we heard a few things about you, Holt. Heard you're slow. Real slow. And that you got a wife who can't exactly run away. Seems to me you ain't in a position to be telling us to move on. Red rage flashed through Gideon's vision. They were talking about Mai Lin like she was property. Get off my land, he said, his voice a low growl. Or what? The second rider laughed. You'll waddle after us. Shame had eaten at Gideon for months, but now it was mixed with a new, protective anger. These men were threatening his home, his wife, his one chance at building something good. I said, get off my land this time. His voice carried the authority of a man who had found something worth fighting for. The leader studied Gideon's face and didn't like what he saw. We'll be back, he said finally. Count on it. As they rode away, Gideon stood watching, his hands shaking not with fear, but with rage. Gideon, Mai Lin's voice came from the doorway. Are you all right? He turned to her. She was pale but composed. I'm fine, he said. But we might have trouble. What kind of trouble? Gideon looked toward the hill where the riders had vanished. The kind that tests whether a man has really changed, or just been pretending. Thunder rolled across the prairie. A storm is coming, Mai Lin said, her needle pausing over a piece of mending. Gideon secured the last board on the ramp and hurried inside as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Those men, she said as they fastened the shutters. Do you think they will come back? Probably, Gideon said. Men like that don't make idle threats. What did they want? He hesitated, but she deserved the truth. Money, food, and they know about you. Some men think a woman who cannot run away is easy prey. Her hands tightened on her chair's armrests. I see. They're wrong, Gideon said quickly. About you being helpless. And about me. Are they? The question hung in the charged air. I hope so, he said honestly. The storm broke then, rain hammering the roof. I have been thinking, My Lin said over the noise. If this is our house, I should contribute more. She reached for the lacquered box she kept near her bed. There is something I have not told you. She explained that her father had been a successful merchant in their homeland. I ran his business for 3 years after he grew ill. I kept the books, managed inventory, negotiated with suppliers. She pulled out a ledger filled with neat columns of characters. My family lost everything when we came here, but I did not lose my skill. A flash of lightning revealed something moving outside. Gideon tensed, grabbing the rifle by the door. My Lin, he said in a low voice. There is a loose floorboard under your bed. There's a pistol wrapped in oilcloth there. You hid a gun under my bed. Mr. Cheng gave it to me with your things. Said it was your father's, and you knew how to use it. My father's Colt, she whispered. I could shoot the wick off a candle at 20 paces. A board creaked on the porch. Gideon blew out the lamp, plunging them into darkness. Get the gun, he whispered. Shapes moved outside. They were using the storm for cover. Halt, a voice called. We know you're in there. Open up. It was the bearded man. What do you want? Gideon called back. Just to get out of the storm. Be neighborly. My Lin wheeled close, the pistol now steady in her hands. They are lying. I know, Gideon checked his rifle. If shooting starts, stay low. I understand. In the lightning's glow, her face was a mask of fierce determination. He saw the businesswoman, the survivor. Last chance, halt. The door slammed inward in a shower of splinters, and dark figures rushed into the cabin. The storm had brought the test he'd been dreading. This time, there was nowhere to run, and no one to fail but the woman beside him. The first gunshot shattered the lamp on the table. Down! Gideon shouted, diving behind the overturned furniture as bullets tore through the wall. The storm outside masked the gunfire. No help would come. Lightning flashed, revealing 3 men spreading out. Should have been smart. Halt, the leader yelled over the thunder. Gideon's rifle boomed, and the youngest outlaw spun sideways, clutching his shoulder. Behind you! My Lin's warning came just in time. The second outlaw had circled around. Gideon rolled as the man swung his pistol. They grappled, the outlaw stronger but Gideon more desperate. A fist connected with Gideon's jaw, and stars exploded behind his eyes. Then My Lin's pistol cracked, and the outlaw jerked backward with a cry. You shot me, he gasped, staring at the blood spreading across his leg. I was aiming for your head, My Lin said coldly. I am out of practice. Give up, halt, the leader called from behind the bed. We know about the money. The $50. Hand it over, and we'll leave. So that was their goal. The money's mine, Gideon called back. Earned fair. That ain't earning, it's charity for a fat man and a cripple. The cruel words hit My Lin like a physical blow. Gideon saw her flinch. Don't listen to him, Gideon said, moving closer. He knows nothing about us. Does he? Her voice was a whisper. Is that not what this is? You took me for money, and I came because I had nowhere else to go. Thunder crashed, but Gideon heard something else, more horses. Reinforcements, the leader laughed. But when the door burst open again, it was Marshal Thorne, his badge gleaming. Drop your weapons, he shouted. This is the law. The fight went out of the outlaws. Faced with armed lawmen, they surrendered. Mrs. Patterson saw riders heading this way, the marshal explained. Figured it might be the bunch that's been hitting ranches. You did good here, son. These men have been terrorizing families they thought couldn't fight back. Or fat men with crippled wives, Gideon said bitterly. Son, the marshal said, studying him. I've been a lawman for 15 years. I know what a coward looks like. They don't stand and fight when they're outnumbered to protect their families. As the lawmen left with their prisoners, the leader spat one last insult. Enjoy your broken woman, Holt. You deserve each other. The words hung in the air. Is that what people think? Mylin asked quietly, refusing to meet his eyes. That we are both so damaged that no one else would have us. Gideon knelt beside her chair. Does it matter what they think? It matters to me. Tears glistened in her dark eyes. I thought we were building something real here. We are, Gideon said firmly. But even as he spoke, he wondered if it was true. The outlaw's words had forced them to confront questions they had been avoiding. Outside, the storm was passing, but inside the cabin, a different kind of storm was just beginning. Morning sunlight streamed through the bullet holes in the walls. Mylin sat at the table, staring at a letter that had arrived with the mail. The paper was fine, the handwriting elegant. It is from a family association in San Francisco, she said without looking up. My cousin has found me a position there. Gideon's stomach dropped. What kind of position? As a bookkeeper for a large import company. I would have my own living quarters. Independent. She folded the letter carefully. They are even willing to send you compensation. Double what Mr. Chen originally gave you. The words hit Gideon like bullets. They wanted to buy her back. And what do you want? He asked. She finally looked at him, her eyes searching his face. I want to know why you really married me, Gideon. The real truth. He sat down across from her. The money was part of it, he admitted. $50 is a lot of money. And I was lonely. So lonely I was starting to talk to my horse like she could answer back. He paused. But I was also curious about you. You were so strong, so unbroken despite everything. I had never met anyone like you. Unbroken, she repeated. Gideon, I see a woman who used to run a business and now cannot cook a meal without difficulty. I see someone whose community paid a stranger to take her away. That's not all you are, he insisted. Is it not? Her voice was sharp. Tell me, if I could walk, if I had my own money and choices, would you have wanted me then? Or do you only care because I am as damaged as you are? The question was the real test. I don't know, he said honestly. If you were that woman, we never would have met. I can't know who I would have been. But I know who I am now. And I know what we've built here feels more real than anything else in my life. She wheeled her chair to stand beside him at the window. My cousin offers me my old life back, she said. Respect, a purpose. Sounds like everything you lost, he said, his heart aching. It does, she said softly. She reached out and touched his hand. But it is not everything I found. What have you found? He asked, afraid to hope. A partner, she said. A man who widens doorways for me. A man who stands and fights when others say he is too slow. I almost gave up last night, Gideon. I almost believed them. But you didn't. He confessed, running would have meant losing you. And I discovered that losing you scared me more than dying. Mylin smiled, a real, radiant smile. That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. You are not a failure, Gideon Holt. A failure doesn't build a ramp for someone else's freedom. A failure doesn't choose love over safety. She held up the letter. Do you know what I will tell my cousin? That I already have a business partner. Right here. Business partner? Her eye sparkled with the same fire he'd seen during the fight. I have been thinking. There's a main trail 2 miles south. Travelers, freight wagons, they need supplies. A trading post. She gestured at the damaged cabin. We will have to rebuild anyway. Why not build something bigger? Gideon stared at her, seeing not the woman her family had discarded, but the brilliant businesswoman she'd always been. My cousin's compensation could get us started, she continued. But we would be equal partners. You give up San Francisco for that. My old life is gone, she said, taking his hand. But our new life is just beginning outside, a hawk circled high above the prairie. Equal partners, he said, testing the words. Even if people talk. My Lin laughed, the sound bright and clear. Let them talk. We will be too busy proving them wrong.